Welcome to Measuring Success Right, the official podcast of the Marriott Student Review, a podcast for students by students, where we connect the leaders of tomorrow with the issues of today.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Measuring Success Right podcast. I'm Frank Turner, and on behalf of the MSR team, we hope that you're doing well wherever and whenever you're catching this podcast. On today's episode, we're super excited to have Adam Johnson with us. Adam grew up in Woodland Hills, Utah, which is in the foothills of the Wasatch Mountain Range. He's currently a senior at Brigham Young University, where he studies political science and international strategy. And additionally, he's actively involved in environmental law research at the J. Reuben Clark Law School. Adams worked as a campaign manager early this year in Utah's most competitive congressional race, and he has experience in the nonprofit sector, leading and participating in startups that focus on social impacts and education in the environment. Adam, on behalf of the MSR team, thank you so much for coming on and being with us today.
Happy to be here.
Oh, yeah. So, Adam, looking at this and the resume and everything, there's so much that we could talk about and that we're going to get into. There's a lot of good stuff. But maybe tell us a little bit about the man behind the CV. What are some things that people might not know if they just met you in a handshake?
Yeah, no, I'm a pretty simple guy. Like you mentioned, I grew up here in Utah, grew up mountain biking, snowboarding, rock climbing. I just like spending my time in the outdoors. Yeah, that pretty much covers it.
Oh, that's awesome. I know a lot of your work deals with like the environment or deals with being out in nature. Is that something that you've always been drawn to, or was it something that you more developed into and started to love the older that you got?
Yeah, absolutely. So Woodland Hills, where I live, we're like right pinned up against the mountain. And so I would spend all of this time growing up out in the woods, just kind of exploring and whatnot. And so some of these natural interests, my work at the law school, work with Conserve Utah Valley, is all kind of stemmed from that interest in outdoors.
Oh, that's way cool. So as a kid, your parents would just cut you loose and say, hey, go have fun?
Yeah, pretty much.
Dude,
yeah.
That's awesome.
It.
And for people who might not know, is the Woodland Hills area, is it pretty foresty? Is there a lot of space to kind of mess around and have fun with, or what's it like?
It's a small town. It's about 2,000 people. There's not a stoplight there, no grocery store, gas station, or anything like that, and it's just pretty much woods, just people spread out throughout the woods there. So it's kind of pinched between Payson and Spanish Fork, or some cities people are more familiar with down there.
That's almost like a Little House on the Prairie type stuff. That's awesome. That's so cool. Well, I've gotten a chance to meet some people who know you, and they talk so highly of you with different projects that you're involved in. One of the things that stood out to me whenever I was getting to learn a little bit more about you is the Small Hill Foundation. Talk to our listeners a little bit about that. What is it?
Yeah, so I served an LDS mission in Singapore, Malaysia, 2017 to 19. And while I was there, I served in the island called Borneo. And Borneo is like a traditionally very impoverished area. People are really poor there. You have families of 5 that might be bringing only like $25, $50 a week back to their home. And so people are struggling to survive there. And so coming back from my mission, me and 2 other buddies, Chandler Callis and Marcus Van Gils, said we've kind of got to do something about this problem. We've been there for 2 years and we love the people, but we want to give back. And so we saw the greatest way for people to get out of poverty was to get an education. And so we started playing around with some ideas. And a long story short, we ended up trying to find a way people could get education. And the first way we saw was BYU Pathways. But even with the great system the church has set up with BYU Pathways, it was still hard for people to pay tuition. Everyone that we took into our program was first-generation college students. And so we saw a room for an organization to come in to, 1, help pay tuition, but 2, offer mentorship to students so they could come in, get a college degree and be successful, turn that into a job and pull their family out of poverty. And so that's the idea that we started with. And from there, it kind of grew until we were able to have about 150 students in college programs with mentors working towards those degrees. So,
wow, that's incredible. So, well, when did that project start? When did you guys start working with the Small Hill, or creating the Small Hill Foundation?
I think the ideas kind of started to flow probably start of 2018, and then kind of matriculated into this organization later that year. And then since then, it's kind of just gained momentum to the point where we've now hired on our first executive director. We've got a lot of volunteers that are helping out, and it's kind of self-sustaining.
That's incredible. Man, that's amazing. That must have been so eye-opening to go to a country. I have very little knowledge about Malaysia, but I'm guessing, I've gotten to travel around into some different places, and anytime that I go somewhere, the culture shock of being somewhere new can be so overwhelming at first. I'm sure to see something like that and to see an opportunity to try and help people kind of gain opportunities that maybe we take for granted here in the States, that must have been really eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild. I grew up, like I said, here in Utah in a middle-class family, and I never had a day where I'm thinking, what am I going to eat for my next meal, or even am I going to meet? And I kind of always took college for granted. I'm going to go to college someday. So you go over there and you see people that, might not have enough money for their next meal, or college is such a long shot that they don't even dream of it. It's kind of disheartening. And so if there's anything that people can do to help out in a sustainable way, of course, it's great. And it's been awesome to see people come together to make that happen beyond me and my co-founders, but also just, a community here at BYU, a community of Utah, and then people in Malaysia step up.
Yeah, man, that's so neat. I know, you're describing the project, talk about a lot of goals that maybe won't fully matriculate or bear fruit for another 10, 15, 20 years. In the short time span that you guys have already had, have you already been able to see some things where you can point to and be like, wow, like that's a real tangible change that you can almost feel or measure?
I think there's success stories that we can see right now that show what we're doing is working. And you could take a ton of different indicators. We've got 10 or 15 students that are now in the United States at university studying. We've got students, and we're looking at retention rates compared to those that enroll in our program versus traditional online college or normal college, and we've got higher retention rates. And then also just looking at the demographic of people that we're pulling from. When people haven't been offered an opportunity to get an education, as soon as it becomes available, it's crazy to see what they'll do to succeed. So I'm really optimistic about the future of the Small Hill Foundation.
Man, that's awesome. And it's so encouraging to hear that it's been picked up so well over there and also over here, that it's gained so much momentum. Talk about bringing on your first executive director, and it seems like it's really, people are starting to understand more and more about it, or starting to learn about it. It's gaining a little bit of momentum here in the States. That's got to be really rewarding to be able to see and think like, wow, we're really making an impact,
Yeah, I just feel lucky to be a part of it.
Hey, well, that's awesome, man. The work that you guys are doing there is fantastic, and it might not be at the same time, but I know that you've worked with Cicero, the company, in a consulting role. Is the Small Hill Foundation something that sparked an interest in working in a consulting type environment, or were those two things happening simultaneously?
Yeah, I think that always like social impact has been on my mind. I don't know if I initially knew that's what it was called, but I wanted to have a career in something that was meaningful. I felt like it was helping people. And so, yeah, it was probably 2 years after the Small Hill Foundation started. I took an internship at Cicero, and we got to work on some different social impact projects, and I was kind of able to work more as like a builder role rather than a starter role, a founder role.
Well, I mean, even just looking back, at your work with the Small Hill Foundation, if I were trying to start a nonprofit or do something similar to what you guys did, I would have no idea where to start. You talk about being a builder. I absolutely love that. What kind of skills did you acquire? Did you learn that kind of helped you with the Small Hill Foundation, and then also build and bridge off of that into your work at Cicero?
Yeah, I think to be a builder, you don't have to start a nonprofit or an organization or anything like that. I think the first thing you do is you just identify a problem. So in the case of the Small Hill Foundation, it was how can we help people get out of poverty through education, right? But for other people, it might be how can we help homeless people in our area, or even could be more simple things that you just see in your everyday life. And then after that, you start developing solutions. And sometimes it's appropriate to turn that into an organization for various reasons, but sometimes it's just going to work with people and trying to implement those solutions to make the world a better place.
Hey, well, I love that answer, that everybody can be a builder, that everybody can help and try and improve their community. I know a lot of the pies that you've had your fingers in have really tried to do that with social impact, with what we've already talked about. And I know another way that you've tried to do that was by working as a campaign manager on a congressional race here in Utah. What was your experience like with that?
Yeah, I was really lucky. So Jake Hunsaker, the person I ran the campaign for, reached out to me, and we had a conversation that Utah's politics were just becoming divisive, and a lot of people weren't being builders per se, but they were tearing each other down. We had this huge chasm come between Democrats and Republicans, and it just led to contention. And that's something that I think is a major obstacle to building. So Jake asked me to come in and help run this campaign, kind of on the foundation of getting people to work together, to come together, to try to understand each other, and then be able to make a difference. And so I was able to learn from Jake throughout this whole process, get people to show up, try to find problems that were happening in their community, And then not just us coming in as a candidate saying we're going to solve those problems for them, but say, how can we help you solve your problem, and what can we do to make you a builder?
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like in addition to, winning the race, another big goal that was at the forefront of y'all's mind was just almost changing the dialogue on how we talk about politics, or how normal politics has become today, where it's really, let's focus on the people, let's focus on the issues, and let's not get lost in a lot of contentious rhetoric or a lot of things that'll get clicks on the internet. Is that fair to say that was a main goal for the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about 10 years ago and you watched a presidential debate, and I wouldn't say this is a perfect example, but people got up and they talked about what they believed in and what they wanted to build as their time as president. And they talked about these positive things they wanted to accomplish. And now if you turn on a debate or you look at a political race, you just see people attacking each other for their past, their history, something they tweeted 10 years ago. And people aren't talking about what they want to build. They're just trying to tear the other candidate down. And so we wanted to come in and try to restructure what a campaign should actually be about. How can we be builders? How can we be contributors, rather than how can we tear down our opponent?
Yeah, I mean, I have it here. One of the campaign's slogans or mottos was to have principles over personality, solutions over sound bites, and optimism over outrage. It's just such a cool way to almost summarize that one of the goals that you guys had, to really put that in a way that I think when everybody reads that, regardless of how they feel about any political issue, they think, no, that's something that I want. Like, let's get back to that.
Absolutely. I feel like the message resonated with so many people. Ultimately, we came up short and we didn't win, but it was incredible to see how many people would come to events or would show up or even just turned out to vote and engaged in politics, because we were talking about a positive message rather than a negative message.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And to be able to see that, hopefully that ripples into society, and you see people take that mindset of trying to improve things and make things better and maybe apply it in whatever way they can in their lives. And I just have to ask, I mean, how old are you, 23?
I'm
24?
24. Yeah.
24? Okay, campaign manager. How does that happen?
Yeah, stroke of luck, I guess. So through some of my work at Conserve Utah Valley, we had somebody working with us, and they just recommended me. And so I got on a phone call with Jake, and we clicked, and the message we were trying to share was the same, and kind of one thing led to the next, and there it was.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
There's a Woody Allen quote, I think, that says that 80% of life is just showing up. And it's incredible how I found that whenever people are just always engaged in good works, that luck just seems to kind of go their way. But that's fantastic that you talk about Conserve Utah Valley. For our listeners who might not know what that is, could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll start from the very start.
Oh, the genesis. Take it from in the beginning.
So about 2 years ago, there was a lot of individual grassroots organizers and people that were concerned about different development projects going on within Utah Valley. And people were had this fragmented approach to working on things. And they were successful in some things and not in others. But then all of a sudden, this really big environmental issue came along. There was a developer who wanted to come in, and he wanted to develop Bradleville Falls. So this beautiful double cascade waterfall at Pearl Canyon that thousands and thousands of people visit each year. And he wanted to put a development right on top of that, which would restrict public access. And a lot of people heard about this and got fired up about it. And they're like, we want this to continue to stay in public hands, and we want to be able to continue to visit it. And so all these grassroots organizers, a group of BYU professors, businessmen, just random citizens came together, and they worked really hard to stop this project from happening. And they worked with Utah County commissioners, and ultimately through a few key people, in addition to probably about 10,000 people that signed a petition or showed up to meetings, were able to stop this project from happening. And we saw a really unique opportunity where usually environmentalism doesn't get that much momentum here in Utah, where people were all of a sudden really excited about environmentalism. And so we decided to take these people that were involved, form into a nonprofit, and then start focusing on other environmental issues here in Utah.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's so interesting to hear you talk about how people from so many different walks of life, either professionally or however that may be, come together to kind of work towards this one goal of preserve. I mean, anybody who's been in Bradleville Falls will always see people proposing or taking wedding pictures. I mean, it's a gorgeous spot right here in our neck of the woods. And to see all that come together must have been really, really neat.
It was the first time in my life that I had seen so many people come together for something that they really cared about. And people were invigorated out writing emails, showing up to meetings, and doing something to make it happen. And then also just seeing the fruits of that. I still go up to Bradleville Falls, once every month or two, and just, go and enjoy it. It's great to see something came from it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And So what was it like in the beginning, in the early stages, from whenever people first hear like, oh, this might happen, to bottling that energy and moving it in a productive direction? What does that process look like?
Yeah, I think that a couple of thoughts. I think one is people are often surprised when they hear about projects like this. Like, are we really considering selling Bridal Falls? Like, it just seems like a pie in the sky, crazy idea, right? And so people usually first, it's disbelief, and then it kind of goes to frustration with your public leaders or whoever's behind it. But our goal at Conserve Utah Valley is to take that disbelief, that frustration, or that energy and channel it in a positive way. And rather than having a negative message where we go and we attack politicians or we get mad at developers, we want to just create a dialogue, have a conversation with people, see what's in the public's best interest, and move from there. And that's something I've been really impressed with Conserve Utah Valley is, for 2 years now, we've been able to maintain a positive message. We haven't burnt bridges with politicians, and that's led to a lot of good work in the future.
Yeah, and I love that, building bridges, just going back to that idea of changing the dialogue of how it is and trying to like find solutions to things that people want to see happen. It's fantastic. I know you said Conserve Utah Valley is only 2 years old. It seems like a relatively young organization.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been incredible to see in such a short amount of time how much this energy that we kind of talked about has been able to produce results. So after Bridal Falls, like I mentioned, we kind of had this momentum, and we started looking for other high value areas that people really enjoy recreating in. So we kind of pinpoint Slate Canyon. We looked at Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We looked at some land up Provo Canyon. These are areas where people hike, bike, just go hang out. And all three of these areas we decided need some special effort in order to protect. So Slate Canyon, we started organizing events, service projects, and within our first year, we had 300 people coming to help clean up the canyon and try to improve the trails, clean up graffiti and these different things. And Bonneville Shoreline Trail, similarly, we started inviting people out, and we host these hikes along the trail. And we're working to connect segments of the trail that aren't completely connected so people can enjoy this all the way up from Bridal Falls down to Slate Canyon, this connected hike. Up in Provo Canyon, there's a ton of hiking trails, but surprisingly the land's not protected through conservation easements, meaning at some point it could be developed in the future. And we're not against development, we just want to do it in a smart way, not on these really high value areas for recreation. And so we've put on some work up there, and kind of one project has led to the next, and as we pick up new projects, new people get excited about it and come in and volunteer to help, and from there we've just kind of organically grown to where we're able to mobilize people on a lot of different projects and hopefully do a lot of good.
No, that's fantastic. I feel like a lot of these projects, there's a lot of potential for there to be a lot of stress or a lot of tension, but the way that you've talked about it just makes it sound like the real goal of Conserve Utah Valley is to try and find how can we keep adding value to the Utah Valley community. And it's not being anti-development. It's where can we develop in areas that'll benefit the highest percentage of people in terms of both protecting land that people appreciate right now and like where can we find areas that good development could happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like a surprising thing. It was surprising for me. I think it's surprising to a lot of people. You go to a park and maybe you want a bench added or there's trash around. A lot of people, their gut reaction is to email the city council and say, hey, what the heck are you guys doing? I'm paying taxes. Like, you guys need to figure this out, right? But it's crazy the different response you get from, we love this park. What can we do to help clean it up? And then they're like, oh, if you'll help, we'll pour in some money. Like, let's see if we can get our grounds team down there. And it just, this collaborative approach has just been so effective in protecting land and water.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite quotes, and I might butcher it, it's by Thurgood Marshall. It says, a measure of a country's greatness is its ability to maintain compassion during times of crisis. And I think it's fantastic to see efforts like Conserve Utah Valley, from what I've been able to hear and from what you're talking about right now, just to see that whenever these kind of things happen and emotions can get really high, or whenever you start adding a lot of zeros behind dollar value implications, you just see people come together and try and make the best of a situation that could go very sour. I think it's fantastic. Looking ahead, what are some projects that CUV is looking at right now, or that you guys are working with?
There's a lot of different things that are going on right now, a lot of different projects. I think that one project that a lot of people are interested in is Utah Lake. If you've kind of walked around Utah Valley or driven around, you've probably seen the bright yellow "Don't Pave Utah Lake" signs, and a lot of people are wondering what's up with that. So there's a company that's come in and they've proposed to build islands that would cover 25% of Utah Lake and then house people on it. And they're anticipating about 500,000 people would live on that. And so that's, for reference, about the size of Salt Lake all of Salt Lake Valley, but out on the lake, right? So seems like a kind of wild and radical idea. At least that's what we thought of when we first heard it. Back in 2017, there was a bill passed in the Utah legislature called the Utah Lake Restoration Act. And it pretty much tried to create a legal loophole for if a company came in and cleaned up Utah Lake holistically, then they would be able to inherit part of the lake bed in return for cleaning it up. And it's a really weird law. It didn't make much sense, but a lot of people were excited about it because they thought, well, maybe a company is going to come in and they're going to clean up Utah Lake, but they didn't really see the implication of it. And then this company, it's called Lake Restoration Solutions, popped up, and they started proposing this idea that they would build all these islands and they would receive the land from Utah in exchange for cleaning up the lake. And I could talk to you more about the implications of this project, but through the science community here in Utah, state agencies, the kind of consensus that's come is that this project would be detrimental to Utah Lake's environment. It would destroy the ecosystem. It would have a lot of negative implications. And so Conserve Utah Valley saw this project, and we came in and we decided that something needed to be done about it. And the first thing is because at Conserve Utah Valley, we personally aren't experts at anything. We know that scientists know better than me. I'm a college student, right? And we've got people from all over different fields, but we wanted people to make decisions for themselves. So we started this education campaign called Don't Pave Utah Lake. If you go to the website or you go to Conserve Utah Valley's website, you can see tons of scientific articles about Utah Lake and what the implications of this project would be. And we started meeting with legislators, city councilors, mayors, just to get the word out. We hosted these Utah Lake summits where people could come and learn, and would have 500, 1,000 people come and learn about Utah Lake. And through this whole process, people have been able to form their own opinions, and it's come to light that this project's just very unpopular in the public perception. And so then we took that back to legislators. We said this project's got some dangerous implications. People aren't excited about it. And the legislator, through our help, and then also with the help of Representative Kevin Stratton, was able to pass a Utah Lake Restoration Amendment bill, which tried to kind of put a roadblock to this project. It made it much more difficult for a private company to be able to take land from the sovereign people of Utah. And that was kind of step one. And then since then, state agencies like Forestry, Fire, and State Lands have come back and said this project doesn't have scientific evidence behind it. The Attorney General's office has kind of deemed this project unconstitutional and legally unsound. And so now the project's coming to a halt. But that was a really long answer to explain what's happening.
No. I love that you gave such a in-depth and thorough explanation. I was laughing whenever you were talking about how a lot of people don't really know what's going on or don't understand the full depth of everything that's going on behind the scenes until they see the Don't Pave Utah Lake signs and start asking questions. That's how I became interested in this. Is that I have an incredible friend who works with you guys, Shannon Lamson, and she was talking about, whenever I just asked her, like, hey, what's up with this? Like, Don't Pave Utah Lake, is that a joke or something? And she was like, no, it's actually like this really, serious environmental project that we're working on. And the more that she explained it to me, the more that I was just amazed at a lot of the different things that were going on behind the scenes that maybe don't get talked about a lot, or that somebody like me who's deep into the books and doesn't really, take their head out of the library that much was kind of surprised to hear. Moving forward, I know you talked about to where you guys are right now. What is maybe an end goal that CUV has with where they would like to see this project be?
Yeah, so this project, Lake Restoration Solutions, building islands on the lake, essentially, we don't want it to happen. We've just listened to the scientific community, we've listened to what the people say, and we just think it's a bad idea for the lake. But I think what's really important to emphasize is that doesn't mean we need to leave Utah Lake just like it is. It's not it's common knowledge that Utah Lake could be better than it is. Between Geneva steel, pesticides, carp, Phragmites, there's a lot of different problems that are facing Utah Lake. And Utah Lake does need focus for restoration. So we're working with state agencies, legislators, surrounding cities, the Utah Lake Authority to try to get more money and focus put on Utah Lake. And we'd love to see Utah Lake continue to improve back to its natural state. And so people can continue to go out and use it, go boating out there. That's the dream, right? And be able to go out and go fishing, whatever that might be for you. We've got a big sailing community on Utah Lake. So we wanted to continue to improve from a restoration perspective, but in a well thought out, scientifically backed, sustainable way.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the conservation efforts to try and help improve Utah Lake have been very successful within the last 5 to 10 years, right? I mean, I feel like whenever I first came to BYU, there was a misconception that if you went into Utah Lake, you would come out with rashes or like a third eye or some weird, deformity or something. But it seems like the more that I've read about it, the more those conservation efforts have been trying to help restore Utah Lake to what it once was. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. So like the Utah chub is an endangered species, and its population is significantly increased in the lake. The carp that are an invasive species are down by 80% within the lake, which is a massive amount. We've got Phragmites. They're these plants that kind of sit in the swamps around Utah Lake, and we've had great progress in getting rid of Phragmites and bringing back natural species. So Utah Lake is improving right now. We don't need to do something crazy like islands to try to get it to improve, but the question is just, can we continue to help it improve, and how can we continue to pour resources and focus and energy into it?
Yeah, and if people wanted to know what they could do to help, or if they could just learn more about what's going on, if they're listening to this and think like, oh my gosh, I want to be involved, I want to be a part of this, what are some good resources for them to turn to?
Yeah, I of course am a big advocate for Conserve Utah Valley. I think that we do a good job of informing people about different initiatives that are happening. In addition to that, we try to highlight different ways that people can get involved. For example, there's Utah Lake shoreline cleanups that happen almost every month through the Utah Lake Authority, and we sponsor some of those or just support other ones. There's a lot of ways that you can help out. To learn about events or just different initiatives, just check out conserveutahvalley.org, or just find us on one of the social media platforms.
Man, that's awesome. Hopefully after this airs, there are a lot of people, hopefully that website almost gets crashed with the amount of people going. Yeah, exactly. There's just a huge spike in people going to it. But luckily we do have people who listen internationally to the podcast. If someone's listening and they're in an area that's not Utah Valley, but they think, hey, there's this thing in my community that I really want to try to improve, whether it's through an environmental issue or a social issue or something else, you have so much experience being able to go in and identify an issue, create a solution, mobilize people, and create effective results. Where are some good places for people to start, or some skills to develop? What would be some recommendations that you would give?
Yeah, I'd say my path was... I'd endorse the path that I had. I had no experience in trying to mobilize people or start nonprofits or any of these different things. I just saw problems and started working on that. And I think what you find is when you find a problem that you want to solve, there's also 10 other people that want to solve that same problem. So talk to people that are like-minded and just start working on it. And whether you make a small dent or a big dent, something good is going to come from it. And so I'd say don't spend too much time trying to figure out what's the legal process to start a nonprofit, or how can we get funding for, a big cause or something like that. Just start small. You'll naturally grow, and then you'll be able to have a positive impact.
Man, well, that's fantastic. I really hope that anybody who's listening, if they see something that they want to try and help out with, they take that mindset of, you don't have to be an expert in something to be able to effectuate change. You just have to have a willing heart and enough dedication to be able to go and just start making changes in your community. So one thing that we love to ask people who come on the podcast is how do they measure success? I mean, the podcast is called Measuring Success Right. So from a professional, almost feels like the wrong word, but from the activities that you've been involved with the Small Hill Foundation and CUV, what are some ways that you measure success in those organizations that you've been so integral and a part of?
Yeah, I think within organizations, the best way to measure success are you solving the problem that you set out to solve. I think really often within organizations, we focus on initiatives and we focus on solutions, and then we try to predict if they're going to solve a problem. But the best thing you can do is just go back to that original core problem over and over again and say, are we making a dent on this problem? And if you are, then that's successful. If you're not, you might still be doing good, but you're probably not having success in what you originally set out to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then I guess just one step higher, beyond that, how does Adam Johnson measure success in your own life, whether it be various endeavors that you take on or in your personal life? What are some ways that you like to measure success?
Yeah, we talked about this earlier, but I think that one way to measure success is being a builder, and that means building other people up. I have a favorite scripture from the Book of Mormon, and it says, it came to pass we lived after the manner of happiness. And being happy yourself can sometimes be hard. Helping others find happiness can also be hard. But in my opinion, that's the most meaningful thing that we can do in life, is try to find others, build them up, and so they can be happy.
I love that. Not just building organizations or building projects, but really building people. And it's that human investment in our fellow man, brothers and sisters, that really probably brings a lot of fulfillment. I'm guessing just getting to know you a little bit. I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what makes me tick.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, hey, on behalf of the Measuring Success Right podcast and on behalf of everybody in the Utah Valley, thank you so much for coming on and for the incredible work that you do. We look forward to seeing where you go from here and future endeavors that you take on. Thank you so much, Adam.
No, I really appreciate it.
Make sure you subscribe to our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or SoundCloud so you never miss an episode. Be a friend and tell a friend about Measuring Success Right.
This podcast is a project of the Marriott Student Review at Brigham Young University. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Marriott Student Review or online at marriottstudentreview.org.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect official policy or position of Brigham Young University or The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.